Karen stared at the large mound of dirt and gravel blocking the private tunnel entrance, her face contorted in a mix of rage and confusion. Unbelievable. Those hooligan kids must have done this as a prank, she muttered, slamming her SUV door shut. Marching up to the tunnel, she surveyed the damage, her hands on her hips. This is an outrage. The nerve of those vandals, destroying our private community property. Her gaze shifted to the nearby construction workers, who watched the scene unfold with mild amusement. Striding over to the foreman, Karen demanded an explanation. Do you know who did this? I want them held accountable immediately. The foreman chuckled, his eyes crinkling behind his hard hat. Mom, I'm afraid this is our doing. We're working on a project for the Army Corps of Engineers. That tunnel is on their land, not yours. Karen's face turned a deep shade of red, her fingers twitching as if ready to throttle the foreman. The Army Corps. Impossible. This is a private community, and that tunnel is ours. You have no right to be here, destroying it. Unfazed by her outburst, the foreman calmly replied, I can assure you, ma'am, that this tunnel is under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps. We have the necessary permits and authorization to conduct these excavations. If you have any issues, I suggest you take it up with them. Fuming, Karen stormed back to her car, muttering under her breath, This is unacceptable. I'm going to call the HOA president and get to the bottom of this. Nobody messes with my community without facing the consequences. Moments later, Karen burst through the door of the HOA office, her eyes blazing with indignation. President Samantha, we have a major problem. Those construction workers are tearing up our private tunnel and then claim it's Army Corps land. This is an outrage. Samantha, a seasoned HOA veteran, regarded Karen with a patient yet weary expression. Karen, I understand your concern, but I'm afraid the foreman is correct. That tunnel has been part of the Army Corps' property for decades. We've known about this for years, but there's nothing we can do. Karen's jaw dropped, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. But how can this be? That tunnel is ours. It's been part of our community for as long as I can remember. Samantha sighed, gesturing for Karen to take a seat. Look, I know this is frustrating, but the fact is, the Army Corps has legal ownership of that land. We've tried to fight it in the past, but they have the documentation to prove it. We have no choice but to let them proceed with their project. Karen's face flushed with indignation, her hands trembling with suppressed rage. This is unacceptable. I'm not going to let them destroy our community's property without a fight. I'll take this all the way to the mayor if I have to. Samantha raised a hand, her expression stern. Karen, I understand your passion, but trust me, this is a battle we can't win. The Army Corps has the legal right to do what they're doing. If you try to interfere, you could face serious consequences. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes narrowing with determination. We'll see about that, Samantha. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Undeterred by Samantha's warnings, Karen launched a campaign to stop the Army Corps' excavation project. She scoured the community's archives, searching for any shred of evidence that would support her claim of ownership over the tunnel. Clutching a stack of yellow documents, Karen barged into the HOA office once again, her voice shrill with triumph. Aha! I found it, Samantha. Right here in the community deed, it clearly states that the tunnel is part of our private property. We have the legal right to stop those workers from destroying it. Samantha, her patience wearing thin, took the documents and carefully reviewed them. After a few moments, she shook her head, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry, Karen, but these documents don't hold up. The deed you found predates the Army Corps' acquisition of the land by several decades. They have the more recent and legally binding claim. Karen's face fell, her shoulders slumping in defeat. No, this can't be. There has to be something we can do. I won't let them take away our community's assets without a fight. Determined to find a solution, Karen began rallying her fellow HOA members, stirring up a frenzy of outrage. She organized a protest at the tunnel site, urging her neighbors to stand their ground against the government encroachment. As the protest grew, the construction workers watched from a safe distance, their amusement gradually giving way to concern. The foreman, sensing the potential for escalation, contacted the Army Corps' legal team, seeking guidance on how to handle the situation. Meanwhile, Karen continued her crusade, firing off angry letters to local politicians and media outlets, determined to expose the Army Corps' unlawful seizure of the community's property. Her impassioned pleas, however, fell on deaf ears, as the authorities repeatedly confirmed the Army Corps' legitimate claim to the land. Frustrated and increasingly isolated, Karen turned to more drastic measures. One night, under the cover of darkness, she snuck onto the construction site and attempted to sabotage the machinery, only to be caught red-handed by a security guard. As the police arrived to apprehend her, Karen's defiant cries echoed through the empty streets, her once confident demeanor crumbling under the weight of her defeat. "This isn't over. I'll fight this to the end, no matter what it takes." With Karen's arrest, the HOA was forced to confront the reality of the situation. Samantha, recognizing the need for a more measured approach, convened an emergency meeting to address the community's concerns. "Friends and neighbors, I know we're all upset about the Army Corps project and the loss of our beloved tunnel," Samantha began, her voice calm and soothing. "But we need to understand that this is a legal matter, and we have to proceed carefully if we want to protect our community's interests." Murmurs of agreement and discontent rippled through the crowd, but Samantha raised her hand, silencing the din. "That's why I've decided to take this fight to the courtroom. We're going to hire the best legal team we can find and challenge the Army Corps' claim to the land." Karen, who had been released on bail, stood up abruptly, her eyes blazing with determination. "I told you all along that we had the right to that tunnel. Now we got the chance to prove it. I'm in, Samantha, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to win this battle." Samantha nodded, acknowledging Karen's enthusiasm, but cautioned, "I appreciate your passion, Karen, but we need to approach this strategically. We can't afford any more reckless actions that could jeopardize our case." The community rallied behind Samantha's plan, and within a few weeks, they had assembled a formidable legal team, led by a seasoned real estate attorney named Michael Strauss. Strauss reviewed the case and the community's documentation, and after careful consideration, he delivered his assessment. "Based on the evidence and the Army Corps' claim, I'm afraid the odds are not in our favor," Strauss admitted, his brow furrowed with concern. "The Army Corps has a strong legal foothold, and their ownership of the land is well documented. Challenging them in court will be an uphill battle." Karen's face fell, her expression a mix of disbelief and anger. "What? But you're supposed to be the best. How can you just give up like that?" Strauss raised a hand, his voice calm but measured. "I'm not giving up, Karen. I'm simply being realistic about the challenges we face. However, I do have a plan that could potentially turn the tide in our favor." The community listened intently as Strauss outlined his strategy, a glimmer of hope emerging in their eyes. "If we can uncover any irregularities or discrepancies in the Army Corps' acquisition of the land, we may be able to construct a solid legal argument to challenge their claim, but it will require a thorough investigation and a lot of perseverance." Samantha nodded, her expression determined. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll leave no stone unturned in our quest to protect our community's property. This isn't over yet." Karen, her initial outrage tempered by a newfound sense of purpose, joined the others in their mission, resolved to fight the Army Corps with every tool at their disposal. With the legal battle underway, the HOA community launched a meticulous investigation into the history of the land and the Army Corps' acquisition process. Led by Strauss and a team of dedicated volunteers, they scoured through old records, interviewed local officials, and combed through every available document. Karen, her earlier recklessness replaced by a newfound dedication, worked tirelessly alongside her neighbors, driven by a burning desire to uncover the truth and reclaim the tunnel. As the investigation progressed, the team uncovered a series of intriguing leads. It appears there may have been some irregularities in the way the Army Corps obtained the land. Strauss revealed during one of the community meetings, "We found evidence of questionable land deals and potential conflicts of interest with local government officials." The revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd, and Karen's eyes gleamed with triumph. "I knew it. I knew there had to be something fishy going on." This is our chance to take those bureaucrats down and show them who's boss. Samantha, ever the voice of reason, cautioned, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Karen. We still need to gather more evidence and build a solid case. The Army Corps won't go down without a fight, and we need to be prepared for that." Undeterred, the community continued their investigation, leaving no stone unturned. They scoured through old newspaper archives, interviewed longtime residents, and even reached out to a few whistleblowers who were willing to share their insider knowledge. Slowly but surely, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a picture of a complex web of corruption and deceit. The Army Corps' acquisition of the land, it seemed, was riddled with shady backroom deals and questionable land swaps. "This is it. We've got them," Karen exclaimed, her fist pumping the air in triumph. "With this evidence, we can finally put an end to their unlawful takeover of our community's property." Strauss, his brow furrowed with concentration, nodded solemnly. "You're right, Karen. We have a strong case now, but we need to be strategic in how we present it. One false move, and the whole thing could come crashing down." As the community prepared to take their findings to court, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. After months of painstaking work, they finally had a chance to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown with the Army Corps, and Karen was more determined than ever to emerge victorious. The day of the court hearing arrived, and the HOA community filled the courtroom, their faces etched with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Karen, her usually impeccable appearance slightly rumpled from the stress of the past few months, sat in the front row, her eyes fixed on the proceedings. Strauss, the community's legal champion, stepped up to the podium, his voice calm and authoritative. "Your Honor, we are here today to present overwhelming evidence that the Army Corps of Engineers' acquisition of the land containing the private tunnel was unlawful and tainted by corruption." The Army Corps' legal team, led by a seasoned attorney named Rebecca Wilkins, bristled at the accusation, but remained composed. "Your Honor, we vehemently deny these allegations. The Army Corps has followed all proper legal procedures in acquiring this land, and we can provide documentation to support our claim." Strauss wasted no time in launching his assault, presenting a meticulously compiled dossier of evidence. As you can see from these records, the Army Corps engaged in a series of questionable land deals, involving local government officials who stood to benefit financially from the transactions. Wilkins, her brow furrowed, interjected, "Your Honor, these allegations are unsubstantiated and irrelevant to the legal ownership of the land in question." The judge, a seasoned legal mind, listened intently, his gaze shifting between the two legal teams. "Counselor, I must say the evidence you presented is quite compelling. However, the Army Corps claimed the land also appears to be well documented. I'll need some time to review the materials thoroughly before making a ruling." Karen, who had been sitting on the edge of her seat, let out a frustrated sigh. "This is ridiculous. How much clearer can the evidence be? The Army Corps is clearly corrupt, and they have no right to that land." Samantha, sensing Karen's growing impatience, placed a calming hand on her arm. "Patience, Karen. Strauss knows what he's doing. We just have to trust the process and let the judge make his decision." Over the next few days, the courtroom became a battleground, with both legal teams presenting their cases and cross-examining witnesses. The tension in the air was palpable, and Karen found it increasingly difficult to contain her emotions. Finally, the day of the ruling arrived, and the packed courtroom held its collective breath as the judge took the stand. "After careful consideration of the evidence, I have reached a decision." The judge paused, his gaze sweeping across the tense faces in the courtroom. "This has been a complex and challenging case, with compelling arguments on both sides. However, after weighing the evidence, I have determined that the Army Corps of Engineers' claim to the land containing the private tunnel is indeed valid and legally binding." The words seemed to hang in the air as a collective gasp of disbelief rippled through the HOA community. Karen's face flushed with rage, her hands clenching into trembling fists. "What? No, this can't be," she cried, jumping to her feet. "Your Honor, with all due respect, The evidence we presented clearly shows the Army Corps engaged in underhanded tactics to acquire this land. How can you rule in their favor? The judge held up a hand, silencing Karen's outburst. I understand your frustration, Mrs. Wilkinson, but the law is clear. The Army Corps has the legal documentation to prove their ownership and the irregularities in the land acquisition process, while concerning, do not negate their claim. Strauss, his expression grave, rose to address the court. Your Honor, if I may, we would like to appeal this decision. We believe there are still avenues we can explore to challenge the Army Corps' claim. The judge nodded, his gaze sympathetic. I will allow the appeal, counselor, but I must warn you, the burden of proof lies with you. The Army Corps has the weight of the law on their side, and overturning this ruling will be an uphill battle. Karen, her face flushed with a mix of anger and determination, leaned in toward Strauss. We can't give up, Michael. There has to be something else we can do. I won't let those bureaucrats take away our community's property without a fight. Strauss placed a reassuring hand on Karen's shoulder, his voice low and measured. I understand your passion, Karen, but we need to approach this strategically. We'll appeal the decision, but we have to be prepared for the possibility that we may not succeed. As the courtroom cleared, the HOA community members gathered in somber silence, their hopes of reclaiming the tunnel dashed by the judge's ruling. Karen, however, remained undeterred, her mind already racing with new ideas to challenge the Army Corps' claim. This isn't over, she muttered under her breath, her eyes narrowing with determination. I'll find a way to stop them, no matter what it takes. Weeks passed, and the appeal process dragged on, with Strauss and his legal team working tirelessly to uncover new evidence that could sway the court's decision. Meanwhile, Karen grew increasingly impatient, her frustration boiling over into a desperate need for action. One night, under the cover of darkness, she slipped onto the construction site, determined to take matters into her own hands. With a bag of cement mix and a shovel, she set to work, methodically pouring the thick, gray substance into the excavated tunnel, effectively blocking the Army Corps' progress. The next morning, the construction crew arrived to find the tunnel entrance sealed, the hardened cement a formidable obstacle to their work. The foreman, his face contorted with fury, immediately contacted the authorities, and within hours, Karen found herself in handcuffs, facing a slew of charges. This is outrageous, she cried as the police officer led her away. I was just trying to protect our community's property. Those Army Corps thugs had no right to be there in the first place. The news of Karen's arrest spread like wildfire through the HOA community, and Samantha, along with the rest of the board, found themselves in a precarious position. We can't condone this kind of behavior, even if it's in the name of defending our community. Samantha sighed, her expression wary. Strauss, ever the voice of reason, met with Karen in the jail, hoping to persuade her to abandon her reckless crusade. Karen, you have to understand the gravity of what you've done. This latest stunt could completely undermine our legal case and jeopardize any chance we have of winning the appeal. Karen, her eyes glinting with defiance, shook her head. I don't care, Michael. I'm not going to just sit back and watch while they destroy what's rightfully ours. If the law won't protect our community, then it will have to take matters into my own hands. Strauss rubbed his temples, a headache humming behind his eyes. Karen, please, you have to listen to me. This is not the way. You're only making things worse, and you could end up in serious legal trouble. Think about your family. Think about the community. This isn't worth it. But Karen remained steadfast, her resolve unshakable. I'm sorry, Michael, but I've made up my mind. I'll do whatever it takes to stop the Army Corps, even if it means going to jail. This isn't just about the tunnel anymore. It's about standing up for our rights and protecting what's ours. As Karen was released on bail, the HOA community found itself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to fight for their property and the need to maintain a lawful, responsible approach. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome of the appeal hung in the balance, with Karen's reckless actions threatening to derail their entire legal strategy. With Karen's latest stunt adding fuel to the fire, the HOA community found itself in an increasingly precarious position. Strauss and Samantha, struggled to rein in Karen's impulsive behavior, knowing that any further missteps could jeopardize their legal battle with the Army Corps. As the appeal process dragged on, the community's spirits began to wane, and the once united front started to show cracks. Some residents, weary of the constant conflict and the seemingly endless legal battles, began to question the wisdom of continuing the fight. Maybe we should just accept the Army Corps decision and move on, one resident suggested during a heated community meeting. It's not worth tearing this place apart over a tunnel that's not even ours. Karen, her eyes narrowed with fury, shot to her feet, her voice shrill with indignation. How dare you? This isn't just about some tunnel. It's about our rights, our community, our very way of life. We can't just roll over and let the government take what's ours. Samantha, sensing the growing divide, raised a hand, her expression pleading. Please, everyone, let's try to keep this civil. I know tensions are high, but we need to stay focused on the legal battle. We can't afford any more missteps like the one Karen committed. Suddenly, the sound of a cleared throat drew everyone's attention to the back of the room, where a well-dressed man in a crisp suit stood, his expression calm and measured. Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing your discussion, the man said, stepping forward. My name is Thomas Blackwell, and I'm an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union, so I believe I may be able to help you with your case against the Army Corps. The community members exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of how to respond. Strauss, ever the cautious legal strategist, approached Blackwell, his brow furrowed with skepticism. And what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Blackwell? He asked, his tone guarded. Blackwell's lips curled into a slight smile. I believe the Army Corps' actions in this case may constitute a violation of your community's constitutional rights. The ACLU is prepared to join your legal team and provide the resources and expertise needed to take this fight all the way to the Supreme Court, if necessary. Karen, her eyes wide with hope, rushed to Blackwell's side, her voice trembling with emotion. You mean you'll help us? You'll fight to protect our community's property? Blackwell nodded, his expression resolute. That's exactly what I'm proposing. This isn't just about a tunnel. It's about standing up to government overreach and defending the rights of your community. With the ACLU's support, I believe we can turn the tide in your favor. As the community members erupted into a chorus of cheers and applause, Samantha and Strauss exchanged a cautious glance. They knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but with the ACLU's backing, they finally had a glimmer of hope in their fight against the formidable Army Corps. With a renewed sense of purpose and the promise of powerful allies, the HOA community prepared to take their battle to the highest levels of the judicial system, determined to protect their community's legacy and the precious tunnel that had become the symbol of their struggle.